Hello followers, it's me, the mod for diverse Tolkien. Today I'm coming to you with another episode in my monthly or bi-monthly, whatever it comes out to be, podcast series. First and foremost, I do want to apologize for the inactivity on my blog. Between work, school, and life, it's been hard for me to run it by myself. That said, with the new year coming, I want to try to do better than I have in the past, so for instance, I want to get Fantasy Friday started up again, but if I can't do Fantasy Friday every Friday, I at least want to do it once a month. Alongside that, if you follow me on Tumblr, you've probably realized that I've been circulating my Diverse Tolkien Film Fest sign up. So if you're unfamiliar with that, I'll leave a link in the description below, but essentially, the Film Fest is just a fest to highlight actors of color, queer actors, LGBT actors, and disabled actors and actresses. So people who aren't usually typically visible in Tolkien's world do have a chance to get visible in a film fest that I plan to put together, given that everything works how it should. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and click the link in the description and you can learn more about it. And if you can't tell by my tone, this is going to be a casual podcast. I just kind of want to get something out there because I haven't been, like I said, as active as I want to. So this is going to be very casual, as if I'm having a conversation with you. Hence, I'm going to be saying a lot. I'll try to watch how many times I say it, but no promises. So that said, what is this episode going to be about? Well, as you all know, the Tolkien Amazon series is going to be premiering either this year or next year. I'm not exactly sure, but I know it's coming soon. And I just want to talk about some things I'd like to see from the perspective of a fan of color, especially when you're dealing with subject matter like Tolkien's world, where we do have a history of racism both in the text and out of the text, so both in the book and in the fandom. I think when we have something like this, it's really important to use the media that were provided in order to kind of combat the racism that's kind of built up since the book was written. And for fun, if you happen to have any social media and you want to tag the creators of the show, feel free to do it. Just tag me, so who knows, maybe they'll take what I say into consideration. And if you are a fan of color, feel free to add your suggestions as well. So that said, what are some things that I want to see as a fan of color in the new series? So first and foremost, I want to see diversity. And when I say diversity, I don't mean just characters of color in the background with minor roles. No, I mean characters of color and major roles. Characters of color and roles that are typically reserved for white characters. I don't want to see us as secondary characters. I don't want to see us as characters that have to follow the white lead. I want to see us as characters that have our own agency, that have as much attention and detail in our stories as we typically see with white-coded characters. And I say coded because most of these are going to be elves. And if not elves, we will probably be getting other races, so like orcs, dwarves, hobbits, and all of these characters are going to be coded. None of them are exactly going to be like white or black. To the extent the same with the men of Middle Earth, just because they aren't necessarily from where we would consider a continent such as like Africa or a continent such as Asia, because those don't necessarily exist at the time in Tolkien's world. So mostly everyone's going to be coded. That said, I want to see coded characters of color and positions where you would typically see white coded characters. And I don't just mean as villains, I mean as heroes. And on top of that, I want to see women of color. When we see diversity in television, it's typically just men of color and a white woman, and everyone suddenly gets cookie points for being diverse and for being progressive. Unfortunately, I think people need to realize that white women are not progressive, not in the sense that you're trying to make them. White women are not for all women, so we need to see women of color in major roles. We need to see females of color. We need to see dwarves of color that are women. We need to see hobbits of color that are women. And not just any women of color, I'm talking about dark-skinned women, because we do typically see darker-skinned women being shunned for women of lighter complexion, and this is especially true when it comes to black women. So, and I don't even think it's too much to ask, but someone's gonna say it's too much to ask. So yeah, just to sum that up, diverse characters and important roles with their own narrative, and not just with their own narrative, but with detail on their narratives. Give them character development. Don't make them the ones that follow the white character. Don't make this a white savior thing. And dark-skinned women, dark-skin coded women of color. And with that, I think it's also important that we use this as an opportunity to address the racism that we typically see in fandom, especially coming from the Tolkien purists, and even people in the fandom now who claim that there can't be characters of color simply due to the fact that Tolkien is borrowing from European mythology. Never mind the fact that in his book, Tolkien does have characters of color, and at the same time, Europe has always been very multicultural. So you have people who first and foremost ignore the subject matter, the canon material in Tolkien's text, while also having people who claim they're European who don't even know their own history. So I think it's important that we put characters of color in the show, not just for the sake of being diverse, but for the sake of, I don't know, showing racists that they're wrong, that we exist. So I think that's very important. It's not just for diversity, but it's making a statement that is kind of multifaceted. It attacks racism just by the presence of people of color being there, but by the presence of us challenging these racist ideals that both fandom and that Tolkien's world itself has perpetrated. So I think that's just super important. Perhaps the biggest thing that I would like to see. Secondly, or thirdly, because those are kind of two in one, another thing I would like to see is moral ambiguity and moral grayness in characters, but kind of more obvious. So we do have morally gray characters in Tolkien's role, but I think that from Tolkien's text, and when I say this, I'm specifically thinking of the Silmarillion, which does take place in the Second Age, and from what I've heard, this Amazon series is going to be taking place in the Second Age as well. We have characters that fandom deems as morally gray, but when you read the book, you get the sense that it's a very black and white kind of view. We don't see the Noldor as people who are leaving Valinor because they didn't feel safe, or we don't see Fëanor as, I don't know how you say his name, so you guys can correct me. We don't see Fëanor as an elf who is and they're right for protecting what's his. And instead, the book paints him in a very negative light, and that you give what you have to your rulers, no questions, and if you want to stake a claim to what you have, that's wrong. We see the Valar and Valinor being very irresponsible rulers, yet we see the Noldor being wrong for going against them. So I just see this as something that's very black and white. I'm not saying that everything Fëanor did was good, because it wasn't, but I'm not saying that he's a villain by any means. I've written an essay about how Fëanor can be compared to black civil rights activists, and I'll link that in the description below, but the book gives us a very negative light of Fëanor. We don't see him as a good person. And again, I think just speaking, especially in the times of our government now, and just in general, you have a right to what you create, and your government does not have that right to seize that from you. But we see in Tolkien's world, an artist trying to keep what's his is seen as something that's bad, and it makes him selfish. And I mean, this can also give us perspective into the time that Tolkien was writing this. There was still great loyalty to the crown. I'm not English, so I can't say that loyalty is how it was back then, but I do know people who are English, and they are mostly people of color, so how they view the crown or how they view the queen and their loyalty to the queen is completely different than how other people might view their loyalty to the queen. But what I'm saying is Tolkien came in a time where people still honored the queen in a way that they don't necessarily today, so we can perhaps see that kind of mindset and how he wrote Fëanor refusing to give up the Silmarils to the Valar. So I just don't necessarily want that anymore. I want, if a character is supposed to be morally gray, I kind of want it to be very, very evident. And I guess another reason I say this is because I feel like with the ambiguity, there is a lot of unnecessary fandom drama surrounding how someone views a character. Some people think that Fëanor is 1,000% evil, others don't, and I just don't think either of those are the right answer. Just to get a clear answer, what kind of smooth the waters down a little bit, and it gets to the point where people feel the need to defend their opinions about how we see characters with hate. So just to be very clear about who a character or what a character is supposed to be, I think would help. That said, I do understand that doing that risk losing the importance of the importance of ambiguity in Tolkien's world, because when things are ambiguous and not cookie cutter, there's a lot that can be left up to interpretation. And sometimes in the long run, I think that is better. Just to be able to say that there's no clear-cut answer for how this character is supposed to be, especially in terms of headcanon and just how people want to see their favorite characters. So maybe somebody can, I don't know, kind of find a middle ground. And just again, it's just really important, I think, that we realize that characters that we do see as evil now are more likely than not very gray. I mean, we have Boehner, we have his sons, we have even the Valar, who we see as heroes, we have Maeglin, who we see as a villain, we have Elwing and Dior, who we see as heroes. I mean, we even have Melian, who we see as a hero, but who trapped her own husband. We have Turkin, who we see as a hero, who trapped his entire kingdom. We have Galadriel, who's the spearhead for Tolkien's world, whose character heavily has allusions to colonialist. And I can go back and forth on how the bad characters aren't really bad and the good characters aren't really good. To sum up Tolkien's world, it would be that we basically just have a cast of morally great characters. And I think this should be made a little bit more clear in the writing. And I will say this is where The Hobbit did pretty well, especially with Thranduil's character. We see him as a character that we all see as this good, heroic character, at least in writing. But when we really get to the core of his character, we see how complex and how conflicted he is. He's a character with flaws, but he's by no means a villain. Even though some of the things he does we may consider evil or may consider bad. He's just a deeply flawed character, but when we put it into perspective, his character and the situation he's currently in, as well as his past, how he acts makes sense. So maybe more Thranduil characters. We know he's not supposed to be 100% good, but we know he's not supposed to be 100% bad. So just to sum this up, because it's already going on like 12 minutes, what we want to see is a diverse cast. We want to see morally ambiguous characters, and we want to see it evident. And just quickly, I don't know if I said it before, but I would like to see racist tropes being challenged. For instance, we see Ao and Maeglin basically embodying the brute character trope, and I would love that to be combated in a way that makes them either good guys or takes away the racial coding, and if not good guys, makes them a little bit morally ambiguous, because the trope is very offensive and does have real life repercussions. And that, my friends, is what I would like to see with the new 2020 or 2021, I'm not exactly sure when it's coming out, series. If you have any suggestions or things you would like to see, feel free to fire off at me in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, thumbs up, and follow me on Tumblr. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a wonderful week.